The champagne tasted like lies. I stood there in the middle of the ballroom, crystal glass trembling in my hand, watching my husband laugh with a woman wearing my necklace. The same necklace I'd looked for that morning. The same one he said was being cleaned. Around me, Dallas's elite floated past in designer gowns and $1,000 suits. The chandeliers above threw diamonds of light across marble floors. A piano somewhere played soft jazz, the kind that makes rich people feel sophisticated. And me? I felt like a ghost at my own funeral. Before we go any further, let me ask you something. Have you ever walked into a room and realized you were the joke everyone was already laughing at? Hit that like button if you know what I'm talking about. Subscribe because this story is about what happens when the person who promised you forever decides you're expired. Ernest saw me before I reached him. His smile froze just for a second. Then he turned to the woman beside him, whispered something that made her giggle, and faced me with that politician's grin he'd perfected over the years. Clarice. My name came out flat. Not angry, not surprised. Just inconvenienced. I didn't think you'd come. The invitation had both our names on it. I said quietly. Hi viewers, kindly tell us where you're watching from and what time it is. Warm welcome to the family. Enjoy the story. He glanced around, checking who was watching. Always performing. Always aware of the audience. Yes, well, these things are mostly for networking. Business connections. You understand. I looked at the woman beside him. She was young, maybe 28. Perfect makeup. Perfect smile. Her hand rested on his arm like she owned it. I'm Brielle, she said, extending her free hand to me. Ernest's new VP of Acquisitions. You must be so proud of everything he's built. Everything he built. The words hit like a slap, but I kept my face smooth. 20 years of partnership, of late nights and early mornings, of ideas sketched on napkins and deals closed in our pajamas, reduced to everything he built. I heard myself say. Very proud. Ernest's jaw tightened. He leaned close, and for a moment I thought he might kiss my cheek like he used to. Instead, his voice dropped to a whisper only I could hear. Clarice, you shouldn't have come. This isn't your world anymore. The music kept playing. Someone laughed too loud across the room. The champagne bubbles in my glass kept rising and popping, like tiny dreams dying over and over. My world. I managed to keep my voice steady. Ernest, I built this company with you. His eyes, the same ones that used to look at me like I hung the moon, now looked at me like I was a stain on his expensive suit. He tilted his head, almost pitying. You helped, sure. Back when things were simple. But this, he gestured around the ballroom, at the senators and oil magnates and tech billionaires holding court in corners. This level of business is about image, strategy, vision. He paused, making sure I understood what came next. And right now, you don't fit the image. Somewhere in my chest, something that had been holding on for years finally let go. Not with a snap, but with a quiet sigh. Like an old rope finally giving up on a weight it was never meant to carry. I set my champagne glass down on a passing waiter's tray. My hand didn't shake anymore. I see, I said. Ernest's shoulders relaxed, probably relieved I wasn't going to make a scene. He never could handle confrontation. That was always my job, back when my job mattered. I'm glad you understand, he said, already turning back to Brielle. We should catch up sometime. Maybe lunch, next month. I looked at him one more time. Really looked. At the expensive suit I'd helped him afford. The confidence I'd helped him build. The empire I'd helped him create, brick by brick, deal by deal, sacrifice by sacrifice. And I smiled. Not a sad smile. Not an angry one. The kind of smile that comes when you finally stop expecting water from a stone. No need for lunch, Ernest, I said softly. I think we're done catching up. I walked toward the exit, my midnight blue gown trailing behind me. I didn't rush. Didn't run. Just walked, one foot in front of the other, through the crowd of people who'd stopped seeing me years ago. Outside, the October wind bit at my skin. The valet looked surprised when I asked for my car. I hadn't been at the gala for more than 20 minutes. As I waited, I heard the door open behind me. For a second, I thought Ernest had followed me. That maybe, finally, he'd realized what he'd just done. But it was just another couple leaving early, arguing in hushed voices about someone's affair. My car pulled up. I tipped the valet, slid into the driver's seat, and sat there for a moment, engine running, heat slowly filling the cold space. In my purse, my phone buzzed. A text from Ernest. "Please don't make this difficult." I stared at those words for a long time. Then I opened my contacts and scrolled to a name I hadn't called in 3 years. Marceline. My old business school roommate. The one who'd offered me a partnership twice before, back when I still believed in standing by your husband no matter what. My fingers hovered over her name. And then I pressed call. What happens when the woman everyone underestimated decides silence isn't surrender? When betrayal doesn't break you, but rebuilds you into something they never saw coming. Stick around, because the next chapter isn't about revenge. It's about something far more dangerous. It's about a woman who finally stops asking for permission to take back what was always hers. The call came on a Tuesday morning, 7:30. I was in my truck heading to the supply depot when my phone buzzed. Dad's name on the screen. "Family meeting," he said. "No hello. No small talk. Estate. 2 o'clock. Be there." Then he hung up. I sat there in traffic, engine idling, and felt my stomach drop. Family meetings in the Hale house only happened for 2 reasons: someone died or someone was about to lose everything. Guess which one I was walking into. The estate looked different in daylight. Less magical, more like what it really was, a fortress built to keep people out and secrets in. I parked next to Clorinda's white Mercedes. Of course she was already there. Probably been there since dawn, whispering strategy into Dad's ear. Inside, the air conditioning was cranked so high I could see my breath. Or maybe that was just fear. They were all waiting in the conference room. Dad at the head of the long oak table, our family lawyer beside him with a stack of folders. Mom sat near the window, looking anywhere but at me. My uncle was there too, arms crossed, face blank. And Clorinda, she sat across from the empty chair clearly meant for me, wearing a cream-colored suit that screamed power. She smiled when I walked in. The kind of smile a cat gives a mouse. "Vernon," Dad said. "Sit." I sat. Didn't say a word. Just waited. The lawyer cleared his throat. "We're here to discuss some changes to the estate planning. Given your father's age and the company's future, certain decisions needed to be made." Needed to be made. Like I wasn't even part of the conversation. He slid a folder across the table. I opened it. The words blurred at first, then came into sharp focus like a slap. Clorinda, majority shareholder. Executive control. Primary beneficiary. Mom, lifetime residence. Monthly stipend. Uncle, advisory board seat. Me, one property. A warehouse on the docks. Built in 1987. Probably full of rats. That was it. 20 years of grinding, saving deals, pulling all-nighters, keeping the family business alive through hell itself, and I got a warehouse. I looked up at my father. "You're cutting me out." He didn't blink. "You'll be fine, Vernon. You've always been independent. Clorinda needs guidance to lead properly." Guidance. I laughed, but nothing was funny. Or control. His jaw tightened. "Don't make this ugly. You've had your share. Be grateful." Grateful. That word landed like acid on skin. Mom finally spoke. "Vernon, honey, this is what's best for everyone. Clorinda has connections. Vision. The company needs fresh energy." Fresh energy. Translation. Your old news. I turned to Clorinda. She wasn't smiling anymore, but her eyes were. "Don't worry, brother," she said, voice dripping with fake concern. "I'll make sure the family name stays strong." Brother. She used that word like a weapon. The lawyer kept talking about clauses and contingencies, but I stopped listening. My ears were ringing. My chest felt hollow. Everything I'd built, every sacrifice I'd made, every late night and early morning gone. Erased. Handed to someone who thought business was about parties and handshakes. I stood up. Chair scraped against the floor. Everyone looked at me. "Is there anything else?" I asked, Voice flat. Dad waved his hand. That's all. Sign the acknowledgement before you leave. I signed. Not because I accepted it, but because sometimes you need to see the knife before you can pull it out. Outside, rain was starting to fall. I sat in my truck in the parking lot, hands on the wheel, staring at nothing. Thunder rolled in the distance. The folder sat on the passenger seat like evidence of a crime. My phone buzzed. Elena, how'd it go? I couldn't answer. Just sat there watching raindrops race down the windshield. She texted again. Vernon. I finally typed back. They gave it all to her. 3 dots appeared. Disappeared. Appeared again. Then, come home. We need to talk. I drove through the rain, windshield wipers slapping back and forth like a heartbeat. Every red light felt like a countdown. Every mile felt like distance from the life I thought I had. When I pulled into our driveway, Elena was standing at the window. She met me at the door, took one look at my face and knew. How bad? She asked. Warehouse. That's it. Everything else goes to Clorinda. She closed her eyes. Vernon. 20 years, Elena. 20 years I gave them. And they handed my life to her like it was nothing. She pulled me inside, sat me down, and for the first time in a decade I felt like breaking. But I couldn't. Because breaking meant they'd won. Instead, I sat there in the silence, rain hammering the roof, and felt something else growing in that hollow space where my loyalty used to be. Not anger. Anger burns out fast. This was colder, sharper, patient. This was clarity. Elena's voice cut through the quiet. So what now? I looked at her. Really looked at her. And for the first time since that birthday party, I smiled. Not a happy smile. A knowing one. Now, I said. Now I stopped playing their game. She frowned. What does that mean? I stood up, walked to my office, and pulled out an old file box from a closet. Inside were deeds, contracts, transfers, documents from the early days of the company. Stuff nobody looked at anymore because it was old, forgotten, worthless. Or so they thought. I spread them across the desk. Elena came over, looking confused. What is all this? Insurance, I said. Pieces of the company they don't even know exist anymore. Properties bought back in the 80s. Supply lines. Infrastructure. All buried in paperwork nobody's touched in decades. Her eyes widened. Can you use this? I picked up one deed. It was for a depot that fed 3 of our biggest projects. Without it, the whole operation would choke. Clorinda thinks she's inheriting an empire, I said quietly. But empires need foundations. And I just realized I'm standing on most of them. Elena stared at me. You're going to take it back. No, I said. I'm going to let them think they have it. And then I'm going to show them what happens when you build castles on sand. Thunder cracked outside. The lights flickered. And in that moment, I stopped being the son who wanted approval. I became the man who'd teach them what practical really meant. Have you ever been underestimated by the people who should have believed in you most? Tell me in the comments, because what happens next will make you rethink everything about patience. 3 days after the meeting, I went back to work like nothing happened. Showed up, answered emails, sat through briefings, smiled when people asked how I was. Nodded when Clorinda walked past with her new executive badge. Everyone assumed I'd accepted it. Even Elena didn't know my plan. Perfect. Being overlooked teaches you to move in shadows. You learn which conversations to skip, which files nobody reads. Invisible people see everything. I spent lunch breaks in the archives, a basement of dust and old paper the company kept since Dad started in 1981. Originals gathered like secrets. Nobody went down there. Not even the lawyer. Perfect. I pulled contracts, deeds, right-of-way agreements. Some ink was fading, but the law doesn't care about neat handwriting. Then I found a transfer agreement from 1986. Dad, desperate, sold infrastructure to a shell company he created. The shell went dormant, no activity, no taxes, but it never dissolved. Legally, it still existed. Its assets weren't listed under Hale Industries. 3 weeks of county records, forgotten bank statements, and buried incorporation papers tied the story together. The shell could be reactivated. The assets could be reclaimed. It was sitting there like a loaded gun nobody knew about. Sarah, my assistant of 10 years, caught me in the archives. Loyal, discreet. Are we doing something illegal? She asked. Not illegal. Practical, I said. She handed me another deed, a supply depot feeding 3 of our biggest projects, registered under that same shell. She smiled that small, knowing smile. Sometimes the people who work in the shadows see exactly who deserves to win. For a month, I moved like a man possessed. Early mornings, late nights, weekends, restructuring the dormant company, filing paperwork, transferring ownership. Quiet signatures, no fanfare. When Elena asked, I said I was building insurance. She asked the endgame. I told her, to prove loyalty is value, that you can't discard the people who built your empire and expect it to stand. Revenge, she said. No, I said. Justice. A snag came when one property was tied up by a sloppy 1986 transfer, wrong signatures, missing witnesses. Dad had very good lawyers. I needed risk, not whispers. I called Marcus Chun, an expensive, discreet specialist in corporate archaeology. Over coffee 2 towns over, I laid out the dormant company, the assets, the plan. He whistled and warned. Once you do this, there's no going back. That suited me fine. 6 weeks of legal surgery followed. Marcus and a team fixed flaws, closed loopholes, witnessed signatures, created redundancies for the redundancies, made it bulletproof. Then, quietly, everything moved into a new corporation I controlled. When the final paperwork cleared, I sat in my truck outside the county recorder's office and breathed. Mine. Sarah called. Quarterly reports. All hands tomorrow. Clorinda presenting a new strategic vision. Perfect timing. Elena and I watched fireflies that night. She asked if I was ready. I'd been ready for years, I told her. She took my hand. Then I'm with you. Especially if it gets messy. Next morning, I wore my best suit, the one that said I belonged in boardrooms. At the office, the conference room buzzed. Clorinda presented charts and expansion plans that depended on depots and warehouses, the very facilities I now owned. I sat in the back, invisible as always. Halfway through her speech, I raised my hand. Which facilities are you planning to use for storage and distribution? I asked. She named the usual sites. Have you checked recently? I said. Dad's eyes narrowed. I stood, forwarded an email to everyone in the room, and watched phones light up. The list of properties owned by Hale Industries now had key facilities missing. You did, Clorinda insisted. Past tense, I said. They were transferred to a dormant shell corporation in 1986. That corporation was reactivated 2 months ago under new ownership. Dad stood. What did you do? I did exactly what you taught me, Father. I was practical. Silence. Then chaos. Sometimes the quietest person in the room is the most dangerous. Drop a comment if you've ever been underestimated, because what Vernon does next will change everything. The conference room exploded, executives shouting, Clorinda demanding answers, Dad turning the same furious red that warned of trouble. I just stood there, calm, watching the empire unravel. The CFO's voice cut through the noise. He's right. These properties aren't on our registry. The room went still. You all assumed ownership, I said, but assumptions aren't facts. Dad slammed the table. Those facilities are essential. I know, I said. I've been maintaining them for 20 years. Clorinda snapped. This is theft. We'll sue. You'll lose, I interrupted. Everything was done legally. Triple-checked by law firms. Every signature valid. Silence. The kind that tastes like defeat. Dad's voice dropped low. Why are you doing this to your family? Family? I repeated. Family doesn't cut you out after decades of loyalty. Family doesn't celebrate someone else taking credit for your work. You taught me that in this house, family means you're only valued when you're useful. Congratulations. You've just learned how useful I really was. Mom's trembling voice broke in. Vernon, please. This will destroy us. No, Mom. It'll make you adapt. I turned to leave. Dad's voice stopped me. If you walk out that door, you're out. No second chances. I was already out, I said. You just didn't have the courage to tell me. I walked away to the sound of panic. The empire, realizing its foundation, had just walked out. Sarah was waiting by my office. That was incredible, she whispered. That was necessary, I said. What happens now? Now I build something they can't take away. I packed a few personal things, photos, books, a mug from Elena, and left. Faces followed me, some stunned, some scared. They knew what this meant. I felt guilty. They weren't my enemies. But sometimes you have to break something to rebuild it right. Outside, sunlight hit like a spotlight. I sat in my truck, breathing. I'd done it. Burned a 20-year bridge. My phone rang. Elena. How'd it go? Like a bomb in a boardroom. She laughed.
Good. Come home.
We need to celebrate. But when I got home, she wasn't celebrating. Papers covered the kitchen table, legal forms, financials, wedding documents. What's this? I asked. She looked up, calm but fierce. Sit down. We need to talk. Sounds ominous. Strategic, she corrected. Your family's going to hit back. Lawsuits, pressure, manipulation. You're vulnerable, Vernon. We need to protect ourselves. I'm prepared. Not enough, she said. They'll target your assets, your reputation, me. I frowned. What are you saying? She pushed a document toward me. Petition for dissolution of marriage. My heart stopped. You want a divorce? A legal one, she said quickly. Not real. We separate assets. Make it look like our marriage collapsed from family drama. I change my name. Disappear on paper. That's insane. That's survival, she said, eyes burning. If I'm legally separate, they can't freeze our accounts or subpoena me. I become a ghost. And then, when the time's right, I come back. Different name, different identity. Your partner. The ally they'll never see coming. I stared at her. This woman who'd stood by me, now ready to become invisible for us. You've really thought this through. For weeks. Since you started the transfers. I knew it would come to this. I exhaled slowly. And you're sure? She took my hand. I've never been more sure. This isn't giving up, it's fighting smarter. I thought of Dad's glare, Clorinda's shock, the storm ahead. When? Soon, she said. Before they move first. I nodded. Okay, let's do it. She smiled faintly. We'll come out stronger. But as I signed those papers that night, my hand shook. It was strategy, yes, but it felt like loss. Elena noticed. Hey, she whispered. This isn't real. Just paperwork. I know. Do you? Ask me again in a year, I said. 3 weeks later it was done. Quiet.
Clean.
No drama, just signatures and a judge's stamp. Elena moved across town, changed her name to Morrison, built a new identity. We still met in secret, still planned. But publicly, our marriage was gone, another casualty of the Hale family war. Dad called once. I heard about Elena. I'm sorry, son. I almost laughed. Don't be. Everything's exactly as it should be. Then I hung up. Some battles you fight with armies. Others, with ghosts. And my family was about to learn what happens when you underestimate a ghost. Have you ever had to sacrifice something precious to protect something greater? Tell me your story, and keep watching because Vernon's next move will rewrite the rules. The invitation arrived exactly 2 months after the divorce. Gold envelope. Embossed lettering. The works. Clorinda's wedding. I stood in my new apartment, the warehouse conversion that everyone thought was worthless, holding that invitation and feeling something cold settle in my chest. The wedding was happening. Despite everything. Despite the company struggling. Despite the lawsuits and restructuring and chaos I'd caused. They were still celebrating. Still clapping for the golden child. The invitation was addressed to Vernon and guest. Not Vernon and Elena because we were divorced now. Just guest. Like I could bring anyone. Like it didn't matter who. That told me everything about how they saw me. Still the afterthought.
Still the one they could dismiss.
I called Elena. She was going by Rebecca Morrison now in public. Her voice was different when she answered, more formal, more careful. We'd gotten good at playing our parts. Did you get it? She asked. Just opened it. Are we going? I looked at the date. October 15th. 6 months away. 6 months to finalize everything we'd started. 6 months to make absolutely certain every piece was in place. Yeah, I said. We're going. But not the way they expect. What's the plan? I smiled. Not a happy smile. A wolf smile.
You're going as my guest.
But not as Elena. Not as my ex-wife. You're going as Rebecca Morrison, representative from Morrison Consulting, the new firm that's been quietly acquiring consulting contracts from companies in our industry. Silence on the other end. Then, you want me to walk into your family's wedding as a stranger? I want you to be there when we show them exactly what they lost. She laughed. Sharp and cold. You're playing a dangerous game, Vernon. I learned from the best. Over the next 6 months, we worked like machines. I finalized all the property transfers. Got every document notarized, filed, locked down. Made it so airtight that even if someone found it, they couldn't challenge it without years of litigation. Meanwhile, Elena, Rebecca, built her consulting firm into something real. Got actual clients. Real contracts. Established a legitimate presence in the industry. Nobody connected her to me. Why would they? We were divorced. She had a different name. Different life. Perfect cover. The company kept struggling. I watched from a distance as projects got delayed, costs ballooned, investors got nervous. Dad tried calling me 4 times. I ignored all of them. Clorinda sent emails asking for meetings. Deleted without reading. They wanted to negotiate. Wanted me to bail them out. Not yet. Not until they understood exactly what they'd done. Sarah checked in every few weeks. She'd stayed at the company, my eyes and ears. It's getting bad, she told me one afternoon. They're bleeding money. The wedding's still happening, but people are whispering that it's all show. That they're trying to save face. Good, I said. Let them perform. Vernon, she said carefully. At some point, you're going to have to decide what you actually want. Do you want them to fail completely? Or do you want them to learn? Can I have both?
No.
You really can't. That conversation stuck with me. Because she was right. Revenge was easy. Teaching was hard. And I wasn't sure which one I was actually pursuing anymore. Elena noticed I was distant. We were having coffee at a place 50 miles from town, far enough that nobody would recognize us. You're having doubts, she said. Not doubts. Questions. Like what? Like, what happens after the wedding? After we reveal everything? Do we just watch them burn? Do I help rebuild? Do we walk away and never look back? She stirred her coffee. That's up to you. I'm here either way. But you need to figure out your endgame before we walk into that wedding. Because once we do this, there's no taking it back. I knew she was right. But knowing didn't make deciding any easier. The months crawled by. Spring turned to summer. Summer turned to fall. And with every passing week, I felt the weight of what we were about to do getting heavier. 2 weeks before the wedding, I got a call from Mom. I almost didn't answer, but something made me pick up. Vernon. Her voice was small. Tired. Hey, Mom. Are you coming to the wedding? Planning on it. Relief in her voice.
Good.
That's good. Your father will be happy to see you. I doubted that. But I didn't argue. Mom, can I ask you something? Of course. Why did you let him do it? Cut me out. Give everything to Clorinda. You knew it was wrong. Long silence. Then, because I was scared, your father built that company from nothing. He's sacrificed everything for it. And when he decides something, fighting him means losing everything. I chose security over fairness. And I'm sorry for that. My throat tightened. Thanks for saying that. It doesn't change anything, does it? No, I said honestly. But it matters anyway. We hung up, and I sat there in the growing dark, wondering if any of this would actually heal anything, or if I was just breaking things I'd never be able to fix. The day before the wedding, Elena, Rebecca, and I met one last time to finalize everything. We sat in my office, documents spread across the desk. "Last chance to back out," she said. "Are you backing out?" "Hell no. I'm just giving you the option." I looked at the papers. At the transfers, the contracts, the evidence of everything I'd built while they weren't looking. At the proof that I'd taken back what they tried to steal. "No backing out," I said. "This ends tomorrow." She nodded. "Then let's make it count." That night, I couldn't sleep. Just lay in bed staring at the ceiling, thinking about that birthday party where it all started. The applause. Clorinda's smile. Dad's dismissive wave. Tomorrow, they'd applaud again. For her wedding. Her success. Her future. But this time, when the applause died down, they'd hear something else. The sound of their empire cracking. And they'd finally understand that the quiet son they overlooked had been holding everything together the whole time. Sometimes the person everyone underestimates is the one holding all the cards. If you've ever been ready to prove everyone wrong, hit that like button because tomorrow, Vernon makes his final move. Subscribe and turn on notifications so you don't miss how this story changes everything. Share your thoughts in the comments and inspire others who've been overlooked. This is for everyone who's ever waited for their moment. Your time is coming. The text came from Marcus Webb, Ernest's former CFO. I called him back within minutes, hands shaking in a way they hadn't since the gala. Marcus and I had worked together in Langard's early days, back when the team was small and everyone actually knew each other's names. "Clarice." His voice sounded tired. "Thanks for calling back. What's this about Ernest?" A long pause. Then, "I quit 3 weeks ago. Couldn't keep looking the other way anymore." My stomach dropped. Looking away from what? Everything. The falsified tax returns, the shell companies in the Caymans, loans to investors that don't exist. It's all falling apart, and Ernest scrambling to keep it hidden. I closed my eyes. Part of me had suspected, but hearing it confirmed felt like vindication and horror twisted together. "Why are you telling me this?" "Because you deserve to know. And because..." He hesitated. "The things he's been saying about you. How you were just administrative support, how he built everything himself. It's garbage, Clarice. We all know it. But nobody had the guts to say it while working there." "What do you need from me, Marcus?" "Nothing. I just thought you should have this information. What you do with it is your call." He sent me files that night. More documentation to add to what I already had. A complete picture of Ernest's empire built on sand and lies and stolen credit. I could have called the SEC right then. Could have ended him with a single phone call. But I didn't. Have you ever held someone's fate in your hands and chosen patience over instant justice? Drop a comment if you understand that sometimes the sweetest revenge is watching someone destroy themselves. Instead, I focused on Viridian. We just closed our second major deal, a mixed-use development in a neglected part of Oak Cliff. Sustainable construction, affordable units, community spaces. The kind of project that made a difference instead of just making money. The press loved it. "Viridian Estates proves profit and purpose can coexist," wrote the Business Times. Ernest's board noticed. I knew because people started reaching out. Investors asking about Viridian's model. Developers wanting to partner. Even some of Langard's own clients, quietly exploring alternatives. Then came the phone call that changed everything. "Mrs. Langard?" A voice I didn't recognize. "This is Richard Chun from Northbridge Capital. We've been watching Viridian's growth with great interest. It's just Clarice now. And thank you. I'll be direct. We're looking to invest $50 million in sustainable real estate. Your model aligns perfectly with our goals. Would you be interested in discussing partnership terms?" $50 million. Enough to make Viridian a major player. Enough to compete directly with firms like Langard Holdings. Enough to make Ernest very, very nervous. "I'm interested," I said, keeping my voice steady despite my racing heart. "Let's schedule a meeting." 3 weeks later, the deal closed. Northbridge Capital invested $45 million in Viridian Estates, with terms that left Marceline and me in complete control. The announcement made the front page of the Dallas Business Journal. My photo, professional and confident, with a headline that read, Clarice Viridian secures major investment, positioned to reshape Dallas real estate. They'd started using my maiden name, Viridian, not Lawn Guard. Like I was finally becoming the person I'd always been underneath the wife costume I'd worn for 20 years. That night, Ernest called for the first time in 8 months. Congratulations, he said. The word sounded like it hurt coming out. Thank you. 45 million. That's impressive. A pause. Look, I know things between us ended badly, but maybe we could grab coffee. Talk about old times. I don't think so, Ernest. Clarice, I'm trying to be civil here. We have history. That should mean something.
It did mean something.
Once. I hung up before he could respond. But he didn't give up. Over the next month, he tried different approaches. Email about potential collaboration opportunities. Text messages about mutual benefit. Even flowers delivered to Viridian's office with a card that read, Proud of you. Let's talk. I threw them away without reading past the first line. Because I knew what he was really doing. He was watching his empire crack while mine grew, and he wanted to find a way to stop it. Or better yet, to take credit for it somehow. But I wasn't that woman anymore. The one who'd let him reshape reality to suit his ego. Viridian landed 3 more major projects in as many months. A sustainable apartment complex in Uptown. A green office building downtown. A community development in South Dallas that actually served the people who lived there. Every success felt like a message sent directly to Ernest's boardroom. Every headline with my name felt like reclaiming identity he'd tried to erase. Then I heard through the grapevine that Lawn Guard Holdings was in trouble. Real trouble. The kind whispered about in conference rooms and bar conversations, never printed in official press releases. Bad investments. Failed deals. Questions from the IRS about those creative accounting practices Marcus had warned me about. Ernest's perfect empire was showing cracks. And I had the sledgehammer that could shatter it completely. But I waited.
Watched.
Let him sweat while I built something that didn't need lies to stand tall. Because some lessons need time to sink in. And Ernest's education in humility and consequences had only just begun. My phone rang again. Another unknown number. But this time, the voice on the other end made my blood run cold. Ms. Viridian? This is Agent Sarah Morrison from the SEC. We have some questions about Lawn Guard Holdings, and we understand you used to be closely involved with the company. Would you be available for an interview? The moment I'd been waiting for had finally arrived. The question was, what would I do with it? The SEC interview was scheduled for the following Tuesday. I spent 3 days preparing, reviewing the files I'd kept for over a year now. Every document, every email, every piece of evidence showing exactly how Ernest had built his empire on fraud and stolen credit. Marceline sat across from me in Viridian's conference room the night before the interview, watching me organize folders with the precision of someone preparing for war. You don't have to do this, she said quietly. You could tell them you don't remember details, that you weren't involved in operations. Walk away clean. I could, I agreed. But then what? Ernest keeps lying, keeps destroying, and nobody stops him. He's already destroying himself. The market's turning on him. Investors are pulling out. You don't need to be the one to finish him. I looked up from the documents. This isn't about finishing him. It's about telling the truth. Something he forgot how to do a long time ago. She nodded slowly.
Okay.
But be careful. Men like Ernest don't go down quietly. The SEC office was exactly what you'd expect. Fluorescent lights, government-issue furniture, the smell of old coffee and bureaucracy. Agent Morrison was sharp-eyed and professional, with a voice that suggested she'd heard every lie ever told and wasn't interested in hearing new ones. Thank you for coming in, Ms. Viridian. We're investigating potential fraud at Lawn Guard Holdings. Given your history with the company and your marriage to Ernest Lawn Guard, we hoped you might provide insight. If you've ever had to decide between protecting someone who hurt you and telling the truth that would destroy them, you know this moment. Hit that like button and subscribe because this is where everything changes. I took a breath. What do you want to know? Let's start with the Riverside deal. Our records show significant irregularities that were allegedly caught and corrected by Mr. Longard personally. Can you tell us what you remember about that transaction? I can do better than remember. I can show you. I slid the first folder across the table. Inside were emails, timestamped and verified, showing how I'd discovered the fraud, how I'd flagged it to Ernest, how I'd restructured the entire deal to protect the company, and how Ernest had later taken credit publicly while erasing my involvement from official records. Agent Morrison's expression didn't change, but her pen moved faster across her notepad. "These are quite detailed," she said. "Do you have documentation for other transactions?" "I have documentation for almost everything over the past 20 years. Ernest never changed his passwords. He never thought he needed to." Over the next 3 hours, I walked them through it all. The shell companies, the falsified tax returns, the loans to investors that didn't exist, the pattern of fraud that had been building for years, hidden under layers of charm and success and carefully managed appearances. I didn't do it with anger. Didn't raise my voice or make accusations beyond what the documents proved. Just presented facts, let the numbers speak, and watched the agents' faces shift from professional interest to something harder. When it was over, Agent Morrison shook my hand. "Thank you, Ms. Veridian. This is extremely helpful. We'll be in touch if we need anything else." "One more thing," I said at the door. "Ernest will say I'm lying, that this is revenge for our divorce, that I'm a bitter ex-wife making things up. We're aware of that possibility. The documents are timestamped, verifiable, and there are other witnesses who can confirm the patterns. Marcus Webb, Ernest's former CFO, Michelle Tran, his secretary, David Rodriguez, former VP of operations. They all know the truth." She nodded. "We'll be speaking with them as well." I left that building feeling lighter than I had in years. Not because I destroyed Ernest, but because I'd finally stopped protecting him from consequences he'd earned. The investigation took 6 weeks. During that time, Ernest tried to contact me 17 times. Calls, texts, emails, even showing up at Veridian's office once before security escorted him out. I didn't respond, didn't engage, just watched from a distance as his world unraveled thread by thread. Longard Holdings stock plummeted. The board called emergency meetings. Investors demanded answers. And the press, once so friendly, started asking uncomfortable questions about accounting practices and questionable deals. Then came the headlines. SEC investigates Longard Holdings for fraud. Ernest Longard faces federal charges. Empire built on lies. Inside the fall of Dallas's real estate king. Ernest's lawyer called me the day the charges were announced. "Ms. Veridian, my client would like to speak with you. He believes there's been a misunderstanding and that perhaps you could help clarify certain details with the authorities."
No.
"He's willing to discuss financial compensation for your time and cooperation. Tell Ernest that my cooperation isn't for sale. It never was. That was always his mistake about me." 3 days later, Ernest called from a new number I hadn't blocked yet. "Clarice,
Please.
just 5 minutes." Against my better judgment, I answered. "What do you want?" His voice cracked in a way I'd never heard before. "I need your help. The SEC, they're saying things, making accusations. You know how business works. You know sometimes things look worse than they are on paper." "Do I?" "Because I remember you telling me I didn't understand business at your level." Silence. "Then, I was wrong. About a lot of things. But please, you can't let them destroy everything we built." "Everything we built." The laugh that came out was sharp. "Ernest, you spent years telling everyone you built it alone. That I was just administrative support. Now you want to claim partnership. I'm sorry. God, Clarice, I'm so sorry. For the gala, for Brielle, for everything. But this is bigger than us. Think about the employees, the people who depend on Longard. You should have thought about them before you committed fraud." It wasn't fraud. It was creative financing. Every big company does it. And there it was. Even facing federal charges, even desperate for help, he still couldn't admit what he'd done. "Goodbye, Ernest."
Wait. Please.
I'll do anything. I'll give you credit, tell everyone the truth about your contributions. I'll make it right. You can't make it right. Some things break so completely they can't be fixed. You taught me that when you gave my grandmother's necklace to your mistress. I hung up. That night, Marceline came over with wine and takeout. How are you feeling? She asked. Honestly? Free. I raised my glass. To truth. And to building something that doesn't require lies to stand. To truth, she echoed. 2 weeks later, Lawnguard Holdings filed for bankruptcy. The company Ernest had spent 20 years building, the empire he'd been so proud of, reduced to assets sold at auction to cover debts and legal fees. And Viridian Estates, with our $45 million in funding and our reputation for honest dealing, was positioned to acquire some of those assets for pennies on the dollar. The irony wasn't lost on anyone, especially not on Ernest, who I heard had moved to a villa in Costa Rica, living off whatever money he'd managed to hide before the government seized everything else. The woman he'd dismissed as embarrassing, as not fitting his image, was about to become the CEO of the company he'd once said she didn't belong in. Ernest's call came on a Wednesday morning, 3 months after Lawnguard Holdings filed for bankruptcy. I almost didn't answer. Almost let it go to voicemail, let him leave whatever desperate message he'd crafted. But curiosity won out over wisdom. Clarice. His voice sounded hollow. Older. We need to talk. I don't think we do.
Please.
Just one meeting. 30 minutes. I'm asking as. He paused, searching for words that no longer fit. As someone who used to matter to you. I should have said no. Should have hung up and gone back to the life I'd built without him. But something in his voice, some echo of the man I'd once loved, made me agree.
Fine.
One meeting. My office. Tomorrow at 2. He arrived exactly on time, which was somehow worse than if he'd been late. It meant he was desperate enough to show respect he'd forgotten I deserved. The Ernest who walked into Viridian's conference room looked like a shadow of the man I'd known. Expensive suit, but it hung on him differently now. Same confident walk, but with something broken underneath. Eyes that used to command rooms now just looked tired. Thank you for seeing me, he said, sitting across from me like we were strangers negotiating a deal. Which I suppose we were. You have 30 minutes. Talk. He slid a folder across the table. Inside were financial statements, legal documents, analysis reports. All showing the same thing. Lawnguard Holdings was dying, and only major intervention could save it. I know what you're thinking, he started. That I deserve this. That I brought it on myself. And you're right. I did. I waited. Said nothing. Let him fill the silence. But there are 300 people who still work for what's left of Lawnguard. People who had nothing to do with my mistakes. If the company goes under completely, they lose everything. And you want me to do what, exactly? Viridian is positioned to acquire Lawnguard's assets at auction next month. You have the capital, the reputation, the infrastructure.
He met my eyes for the first time.
I'm asking you to merge the companies. Save those jobs. I'll step away completely, sign over everything. You'd be CEO. Full control. Comment below if you've ever had someone who destroyed you come back begging for help. The person who once said you didn't belong, now asking you to save everything they couldn't. I leaned back in my chair, studying him. Let me understand this. You want me to use my company, the one I built from nothing after you erased me, to save the company you built on lies and stolen credit. When you say it like that, how else should I say it, Ernest? You gave my jewelry to your mistress. Told people I was just administrative support. Said I didn't belong at your gala. And now you want me to rescue you? His jaw tightened. I was a fool. Arrogant and blind and cruel. I threw away the best thing I ever had because I was too stupid to see what I was losing until it was gone. Finally, something true. I can't undo what I did. Can't take back the words or fix the damage. But maybe I can do one thing right. He pushed another folder across the table. These are documents showing your actual contributions to Lawnguard. Every deal you structured. Every crisis you solved. Every idea you generated. All of it documented and verified. I opened the folder. Inside were emails, meeting notes, project proposals. 20 years of proof that I'd been a partner, not a prop. Why now? I asked. Because you deserve the truth on record. And because those 300 employees deserve a chance. I closed the folder, looked at the man who'd once promised me forever and delivered betrayal instead. I'll think about it, Clarice. 30 minutes is up, Ernest. Thank you for the documents. He stood slowly, like his bones hurt. I don't expect forgiveness. Don't even expect you to care anymore. But for what it's worth, I'm sorry. For all of it. After he left, I sat in that conference room for an hour, staring at the folders he'd brought. The admission of guilt. The proof of my contributions. The plea for mercy. Marceline found me there at sunset. So, she asked, what are you going to do? I don't know yet. Yes, you do. You've known since the moment he walked through that door. She was right. I did know. The Longard Holdings auction was scheduled for 3 weeks later. Viridian showed up with cash and a solid acquisition plan. We weren't the only bidders, but we were the strongest. When the gavel fell, Viridian Estates had purchased all of Longard's remaining assets. Properties. Contracts. Employees. Everything Ernest had built, now under my control. The press had a field day. From dismissed wife to company CEO, Clarice Viridian's stunning reversal. The woman who rebuilt an empire, inside Viridian's acquisition of Longard Holdings. But my favorite headline came from the Dallas Business Journal. Justice served. Clarice Viridian takes control of company she always helped build. The first day as CEO of what was now Viridian Holdings, I called an all-hands meeting. 300 employees packed into the main conference room, nervous and uncertain about their futures. I stood at the front, looking at faces I'd known for years and others I'd never met. I know you're worried, I started. Your company filed for bankruptcy. Leadership failed you. Your futures felt uncertain.
But I want to be clear about something.
That wasn't your fault. You showed up, did your jobs, trusted people who should have been trustworthy. I paused, making sure every person heard what came next. That ends now. Under Viridian, we build honestly. We profit ethically. We succeed without destroying the people who made that success possible. Some of you will choose to leave, and I understand. But for those who stay, I promise you this. Your work will be valued. Your contributions will be recognized. And you will never again be part of a company that operates on lies. The room was silent. Then someone in the back started clapping. Others joined. Within seconds, 300 people were applauding, not for me, but for the promise of something better. That night, I drove past the house Ernest and I used to share. It was empty now, up for sale to cover his legal debts. The windows were dark. The garden we'd planted together had gone wild with neglect. I didn't feel triumphant looking at it. Didn't feel vindicated or satisfied. I just felt tired and ready to go home to my small apartment and the life I'd built that didn't require anyone else's approval to exist. My phone buzzed. A text from an unknown international number. I heard about the acquisition. You deserved it. All of it. I hope someday you can forgive me. I stared at those words for a long time. Then I deleted the message and blocked the number. Because forgiveness wasn't something he got to request, and I granted. It was something I did for myself, in my own time, on my own terms. And I wasn't there yet. Maybe I never would be. But I was somewhere better. Somewhere that looked a lot like peace. The annual charity gala came around again exactly 2 years after the night Ernest told me I didn't belong. The invitation arrived in gold embossed letters, just like before. But this time, my name stood alone. Ms. Clarice Viridian, CEO of Viridian Holdings. Marceline watched me open it over coffee in my office. Our office now, on the top floor of the building that used to house Longard's headquarters. You going? She asked. I think I have to. I set the invitation down. Full circle and all that. Need a date? I need a friend. Which fortunately I have. The week before the gala, a journalist from Forbes called. They were doing a feature on business comebacks and wanted to interview me about the woman who rose from betrayal to build an empire. I almost said no. But then I thought about all the women out there who felt invisible, erased, dismissed by people who should have valued them. So I said yes. The interview ran 3 days before the gala. "The Quiet Power of Clarice Viridian," read the headline. The article detailed everything. The early days with Ernest. The erasure. The gala humiliation. The rebuilding. The acquisition. They'd found Marcus Webb, Ernest's former CFO, who went on record. Clarice was the backbone of Lawn Guard from day one. Ernest couldn't have built anything without her. The fact that he tried to erase her contributions was his biggest mistake and, ultimately, his downfall. By the time the gala arrived, I was front-page news again. But this time on my terms, with my truth. In my own words, I pulled out the midnight blue gown. The same one from that terrible night 2 years ago. Had it dry cleaned, had the hem repaired where I'd stepped on it, leaving Ernest's gala in tears. Marceline raised her eyebrows when I told her. "You sure about wearing that?" "Positive. Some things deserve a second chance to be seen properly. If you've ever gone back to a place that hurt you, not to relive the pain but to prove you survived it, you know this feeling. Hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications because this is what victory looks like when you don't have to shout about it." The ballroom looked the same. Same chandeliers. Same marble floors. Same piano playing soft jazz in the corner. But everything else had changed. When I walked in, heads turned. Whispers spread. But this time, they weren't cruel. They were curious. Impressed. Maybe even a little afraid. Senator Morrison crossed the room to shake my hand. "Ms. Viridian, what an incredible story. I've been following Viridian Holdings' progress. Remarkable what you've built." "Rebuilt," I corrected gently. "I'm just finishing what I started 20 years ago." Throughout the night, people approached. Investors. Developers. Former Lawn Guard employees who worked for me now. Each with congratulations, respect, sometimes even apologies for believing Ernest's version of history. I accepted it all with grace. Not because I'd forgiven everyone, but because holding anger in a room full of people who finally saw me clearly seemed pointless. Then I saw her.
Brielle.
Standing alone near the bar, no longer wearing diamonds that didn't belong to her. She looked smaller somehow, less certain. Our eyes met across the room. She looked away first. I could have left it there. Could have let the moment pass without acknowledgement. But something made me walk over. "Brielle," I said. She turned, surprise flickering across her face. "Ms. Viridian, I wasn't sure you'd remember me. Hard to forget someone wearing your grandmother's necklace." She winced. I didn't know. Not at first. By the time I realized what he'd done, what he'd taken from you and given to me, she trailed off.
"I'm sorry."
"That's inadequate, but it's true." I studied her. She was young, ambitious, probably believed Ernest, when he said his marriage was over, that I was the past and she was the future. "Where are you working now?" I asked. "Small firm in Houston. After Lawn Guard went under, most places wouldn't touch anyone associated with Ernest." "You interested in coming back to Dallas?" "Viridian's looking for a VP of Sustainable Development. Someone smart, with real estate experience and something to prove." Her eyes widened. "You're offering me a job? After everything?" "I'm offering you a chance. What you did with Ernest showed ambition. What you do with this opportunity will show character. Choose wisely." I walked away before she could answer, leaving her to decide if she wanted redemption or if she'd rather hold onto whatever comfort came from playing victim to Ernest's manipulations. The gala's main event was a speech by this year's honoree. Some tech CEO who'd made millions in AI and decided philanthropy would be his legacy. But before he spoke, the MC announced a special recognition. "This year, we'd like to honor someone who embodies resilience, integrity, and the power of rebuilding. Someone who turned personal betrayal into professional triumph while maintaining ethical standards that inspire us all. Please welcome Ms. Clarice Viridian." The spotlight found me. My heart hammered. This wasn't planned. I hadn't prepared anything. Marceline squeezed my hand.
"Go. Say what needs saying."
I walked to the stage on shaking legs. Took the microphone. looked out at a room full of Dallas's elite, the same people who'd watched me get humiliated 2 years ago in this exact space. I didn't prepare a speech. I started. Didn't know I'd be standing here tonight. But maybe that's fitting. Because the best lessons come when we're not prepared. When life forces us to figure out who we are without a script. I paused, gathering thoughts that had been waiting 2 years to be spoken out loud. 2 years ago, someone I loved told me I didn't belong here. In this room. At this level of business. He convinced himself I was an embarrassment. That I didn't fit the image he needed to project. The room was silent. Everyone knew who I meant. He was wrong. Not because I belonged then, and he couldn't see it, but because belonging isn't something someone else grants you. It's something you claim for yourself. I looked around the ballroom. At the chandeliers I'd helped buy. The marble floors I'd helped pay for. The empire I'd helped build before I built my own. I don't shout when I'm hurt. I calculate. I rebuild. I prove through action what others denied with words. And I do it honestly because success built on lies always crumbles eventually. Someone started clapping, then another. Within seconds, the entire ballroom was applauding. Not politely. Genuinely. I left the stage to find Marceline waiting with tears in her eyes. That, she said, was perfect. As the night wound down, I stood on the same terrace where Ernest had told me to go home before I embarrassed us both. The October wind felt the same. The city lights looked the same. But I was different. Fundamentally, permanently changed. My phone buzzed. An email from the Forbes journalist with the final version of my feature. Subject line: The woman who rebuilt an empire. I didn't open it. Didn't need to read about my journey when I'd lived every painful, triumphant moment of it. Instead, I looked out at Dallas, at the city I'd helped shape through 2 decades of real estate deals and sustainable development and quiet determination. Ernest was somewhere out there. Maybe in Costa Rica. Maybe somewhere else. Living with consequences and regrets and the knowledge that he'd thrown away something irreplaceable because he'd been too blind to see its value. I didn't hate him anymore. Didn't wish him harm. 5 years after the gala, I stood in front of Viridian Holdings' newest building. 20 stories of sustainable architecture, green technology, and ethical investment bearing my name. The dedication ceremony drew hundreds. Employees, investors, city officials, press documenting what they called the jewel of conscious capitalism in Texas. But the moment that mattered most came quietly, at sunset, when the crowd had thinned and I stood alone in the building's lobby, looking up at the atrium designed to maximize natural light. Marceline found me there, 2 cups of coffee in hand. Thinking deep thoughts. Thinking about beginnings, I said. About the girl who met a charming man in a coffee shop and thought she'd found a partner. About all the versions of myself between then and now. Regrets.
Some.
But mostly gratitude. For the pain that taught me I was stronger than I knew. For the betrayal that forced me to build something better. For the humiliation that became fuel for transformation. She smiled. Very philosophical for someone who just became the most powerful woman in Dallas real estate. Power's strange, I mused. I have more of it now than I ever did with Ernest. But it feels different. Less about dominance, more about responsibility. Less about proving I belong, more about making sure others know they do. Viridian Holdings employed over 800 people now. We'd completed 37 sustainable developments. Invested $200 million in underserved communities. Created affordable housing for 5,000 families. Numbers that looked impressive on paper but meant lives changed, families housed, communities strengthened. Ernest's legacy was bankruptcy and fraud charges. Mine was buildings that would stand for generations, built on foundations of truth instead of lies. The universe has a funny way of sorting things out. Sometimes quickly, sometimes slowly, but always eventually. If this story resonated with you, if you've ever been underestimated or erased or told you didn't belong, do me a favor. Hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications. Because there are more stories coming about ordinary people who refused to stay small when others tried to shrink them. Share this in the comments if you know someone who needs to hear that betrayal isn't the end. It's often the beginning of something they were always meant to build. A year after the building dedication, I got an email from an unfamiliar address. Subject line: from someone you probably don't want to hear from. I almost deleted it, but curiosity won. Clarice, I don't expect you to read this, let alone respond. But I needed to say it anyway. Watching what you built, what you became after I tried to erase you, has been the most humbling experience of my life. You were always the foundation. I was just the ego standing on top, pretending I was holding up the sky. I hope you're happy. You deserve that more than anyone I know. I read it twice. Then I did something I couldn't have done 5 years ago. I wrote back. Ernest, thank you for saying that. I hope you've found peace.
I have.
Best wishes, Clarice. Short, civil, free of the anger that used to keep me up at night. Because forgiveness isn't about them.
It's about you.
About releasing weight you were never meant to carry, so you can move forward unencumbered. I forgave Ernest not because he deserved it, but because I deserved to be free. Last month, I attended another gala. This one celebrating women in business, hosted by an organization I'd helped fund. The keynote speaker was a young entrepreneur who'd built a tech startup from nothing after her co-founder tried to push her out. During her speech, she mentioned me. I read about Clarice Viridian when I was at my lowest, when I thought betrayal had ended my career. Her story taught me that the person who dismisses you is often just clearing the path for you to build something better. After the event, she approached me, nervous and excited. Ms. Viridian, thank you for being visible, for showing women like me that we don't have to disappear when someone tries to erase us. I hugged her. You never had to disappear. You just had to get angry enough to become who you always were underneath. That's the legacy I want. Not buildings or money or headlines, but younger women who see my story and realize that betrayal can be transformation if you're brave enough to rebuild. The moral of this story isn't about revenge, isn't about destruction, isn't even really about justice, though that came eventually. It's about this. Never let anyone convince you that you don't belong in something you helped build. Because one day, they might find themselves begging for a seat at your table. And the sweetest justice is the quiet kind. The kind that looks like dignity, hard work, and success no apology can undo. I'm Clarice Viridian. Once upon a time, I was Mrs. Longard, the woman who didn't fit her husband's image. Now I'm the CEO of a company that proves profit and purpose can coexist. That ethics and success aren't opposites. That the woman dismissed as embarrassing can become the one everyone wants to emulate. My midnight blue gown hangs in my closet, cleaned and preserved. I haven't worn it since that last gala.
Don't need to.
Because I've already proven everything it represented. That I survived, rebuilt,
thrived.
That silence isn't weakness. It's calculation. And that the best revenge isn't payback. It's peace, power, and living well while they learn to live with consequences. Thank you for staying with me through this journey. Subscribe and turn on those notifications because next week we're sharing another story about a woman who everyone underestimated until she became the one person they all needed. Drop a comment below telling me, have you ever been told you didn't belong somewhere, only to prove them spectacularly wrong? Your story might inspire someone who's in their darkest moment right now, wondering if they'll ever rise again. Share this video with someone who needs to hear that betrayal doesn't break you. It rebuilds you into someone stronger. Tag them. Send them this message. You are not the problem. You never were. And remember, whether you're watching from New York at midnight, London at dawn, Tokyo in the afternoon, or anywhere else in this world, you belong wherever you decide to build. No one gets to tell you otherwise. Until next time, keep building your empire. Keep telling your truth. And keep reminding the world that the people they underestimate are often the ones who change everything. This is Clarice's story, but it could be yours too. See you in the next one. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and turn on notifications. You won't want to miss what's coming. Stay strong. Stay silent when you need to calculate. And stay loud when it's time to claim what's yours. Welcome to the family. Now go out there and show them exactly who you are.